The 454 Casull. The mighty 454 Casull. The cartridge, philosophy, why I purchased one, the flexibility of it, reloading for it, shooting it, taming the beast. That's what we're going to talk about, the 454 Casull, which will apply to the 454, pretty much any big bore Magnum handgun. Welcome to the podcast where we talk about guns, gunfighting, tactics, ballistics, different cartridges, reloading, all manner of things gun and gun adjacent, the right way with biblical, Judeo-Christian values, real-world first-hand experience. I am blessed to serve you as host. Bona fides in the show notes, bullet points in there. Let's talk about this cartridge. Now, I have done an entire episode on the 454 Casull, just a cartridge in the past, but that was fairly abstract as I don't know if I had ever shot one. Maybe I had. I've shot who knows how many guns and managed firearms and training companies. I've shot a lot of guns, shot a lot of other people's guns, but as far as like a lot of shooting, I never owned and dedicated myself to training with, practicing with a 454 Casull. Well, what changed that? Well, one is you guys in the podcast. I know there are some big iron aficionados out there that just love Magnum big bore handguns. A lot of it was for you guys. Another big part of it is a lot of you guys out there are really into reloading. And I grew up reloading. I like reloading. I have a enjoyment and passion for reloading. But the past several years since my wife and I got married and lived nomadically, I gave up the reloading. It's kind of one of the things you have to give up as a nomad, practically. Well, we were blessed recently to settle on a piece of property in a little cabin in the woods in the mountains. And one of the first things I had in mind was to get back into reloading. Well, as much as I love reloading, it actually doesn't make logical sense as far as literal dollars and cents. It just, for common calibers that I normally shoot, it doesn't make sense. Even if I were to pay myself minimum wage, it just doesn't make sense to reload 9mm, 223 or 5.56, even 308, 30-06. That's the bulk of rifles and stuff that I own. And I have reloaded in the past for shotguns. Even that doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, none of it makes a lot of sense unless financially you're shooting a bit of an odd caliber. Like if you were going to shoot a lot of 284 Winchester, which is a great caliber, but not mainstream, not a lot of variety available, and it's going to cost you a pretty penny. If you were going to shoot a lot of, let's say, 444 Marlin, right, it would be way more affordable to reload for that than to buy factory ammo after a certain point. Well, I wanted to justify reloading from a financial standpoint as well. There are other reasons to reload, but one of them being you just enjoy it. Another one being making specialty loads, which I'll probably cover in a different episode because I've got some of that stuff coming. By God's grace, we'll cover that. But anyway, that factored into the 454 Casull. That's a caliber that it's not crazy expensive to reload for, but it's very expensive to buy ammo for. I think I paid 40-some bucks for 20 rounds when I got the gun because it bugs me to have a gun and not have ammo for it. Anyway, another reason I got the gun, let's back up to the gun itself, is I like the flexibility of the 454 Casull. One, I already own a 45 caliber, and there's different 45 calibers. There's .452 and .458. They're the big two that I know of. Like 4570 is not the same 45 caliber as 45 ACP or 454 Casull. I already own a 452 caliber and a 45 ACP Colt Combat Elite that I've had for years. It's a fantastic gun. So I have that already. And since I have said cartridge, and 45 is a lot more common than something like 44, and there's a lot of different rounds for 44, which is .429 diameter, but not nearly as many as 45. So it's a flexible caliber. Also with 454 Casull, because it's a revolver round, you can shoot 454 Casull. You could shoot 45 ACP, or you could, if you had it cut for moon clips, shoot 45 ACP. You could shoot 45 auto rim, which doesn't make a lot of sense unless you have a bunch of that brass. And the other big one is you can shoot 45 Colt, and what I'm going to call hot 45 Colt, 45 Colt plus P or plus P plus. Because in the right firearm, you can load 45 Colt up as hot as 44 Magnum. Now, you run into some issues with that, though. Issues like, will my firearm handle it? Which brass will handle it? Will the brass handle the pressure? Am I going to get issues stretching the frame, cracking the frame? And that can all be worked around But why? Why work around it when I could get a 454 Casull? And you might say, well, why not a 460 Smith & Wesson, which is more powerful? You can also shoot the 454 Casull, and you can also shoot 45 ACP, 45 auto rem. Why not get a 460? Well, because the 460s are in the X frame and they're comically large, like they're a crew served handgun. They are, if you see a photo of this handgun, they are substantially bigger than the handgun that I got, and that's pushing what's practical. I would say too big to be useful for what I want to do with it, which leads me to the other big reason I got it. Last year, I did a short range elk hunt. It was an area that was close-ish to my house that I could hunt. I could get an over-the-counter tag for. And I figured since it was a short-range weapons hunt, less people would do it. And since it was a cow elk tag, less people would do it. A lot of people hunt for the antlers, not me. Nothing wrong with it if you do it, just not me. And I've shot plenty of elk. By God's grace, I'll shoot more this year. But anyway, last year I just took a shotgun, smoothbore shotgun with slugs. That's what I had. And I did. By God's grace, I harvested a nice elk. Gave the family a lot of meat, which was a great blessing. Well, I thought on that hunt, it was a pretty brutal hunt. And I thought, this would be easier with a big bore handgun. And so this year, with all that stuff, wanting to do some big bore content for you guys, wanting to reload, and knowing that tag exists fairly close to my house, I decided 454 Casull would be a good idea. And two really came to mind. The Taurus Raging Hunter, which I've recently changed my mind on Taurus. One of the patrons sent me a Taurus 357 Magnum, and it's a good gun. I've shot it quite a bit. It's a good gun. It's no frills, but it's a workhorse. And the Raging Hunter had a lot going for it. It came ported, which would be nice. It also came with a pretty big section of optics rail, Picatinny rail on the top. That's a big bonus. Also comes in a manageable size. And they're not cheap, but they're not expensive for a big bore revolver. They're $700, $800, $850, somewhere in there for the Raging Hunter and 454. However, when I was actually in the same shop that had those kicking around, I saw in the used rack they had two Ruger Super Red Hawk 454 Cazulls. One of which was cheaper, I think, or at the same price, or right in the ballpark, or even cheaper than the Taurus. And I'm going to be honest, part of what got me to buy that one, it's a Ruger, it's made in America, which I like. There's nothing wrong with Taurus. They're not made in Turkey, they're made in Brazil. Brazil's okay, I got no beef with Brazil. Brazil actually makes pretty good beef. But if I can go American for the same price, why not? And it's a Ruger, it's a good gun. And also when I was a kid, one of my father's friends opened up a box and it had a revolver in it that had that gun metal gray finish, if you know what I'm talking about. Not the stainless finish, which I love stainless. You guys have listened long enough to probably know that I love stainless. This is like a stainless with a gun metal gray finish. It's like a dark matte gray, and I think it's one of the most beautiful finishes that have ever been put on a firearm ever. It's not meant to be a prom queen, it's meant to be used. It's not like a high polished blue. I think it's a great finish. Well, one of those revolvers had that finish. I saw it in the store. I hemmed and hawed on it for about a week. I went back and I thought, if they still have it, I'll get it. Well, I went back, they had it, and I got it. And that is the Ruger Super Red Hawk 454 Casull 9.5-inch barrel. I think it's 9.5 inches. It's somewhere around there. It's a long, long barrel. Now, let me just stop you here if you think you're going to carry one of these around. This is not a practical carry gun. I did not get this to be like the big iron on my hip guy walking around EDCing a 454 Casull. I think that is a step in the wrong direction as far as personal protection and self-defense. And yes, I live in grizzly country. We got both kinds of bears. We got wolves. We got mountain lions. I routinely hunt bear. I have bear hounds, right? I don't think that you're better off with this gun, 454 Casull. I know it's controversial, than you are with just a more common gun like a 9mm with heavier caliber bullets. This thing is glacially slow to get out and shoot. I know this is going to be controversial. You do what you want to do with your life. This is not a shall. This is not a commandment. There's no you shall not EDC a 454 Casull. Right? If you want to do it, you do it. I'm just talking about from logic and reason. If I want to stay alive, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm not aware of anybody that's had heavy for caliber hard cast 9mm that is putting well-placed rounds in the right place on a bear, whether it be brown or black, that hasn't done the job. But I have heard of people that had a big, heavy revolver they couldn't get to quickly enough, and they died. They got eaten with their big bore revolver. Because it doesn't matter how powerful the revolver is. What matters is getting hits on target. That's not why I got the gun. I don't plan on carrying it for that. Now, if I'm doing an elk hunt and I get attacked by a bear, I'll certainly shoot a bear with it. But I got it for a dual-purpose short-range weapon hunt, which there are a few of those in the area, which require a straight-walled pistol caliber pistol. You can't cheat and get a stock pistol or a brace pistol or anything like that in a non-pistol round. It's a pretty good rules, whoever wrote it. And there are quite a few of those deer and elk areas and hunts where I'm at. So, deer and elk. That's why I got it. I don't think it's a practical carry gun. I think it's a decent elk hunting handgun, which is why I got it. I think the 454 Casull is a beast of a handgun. And I'm going to be honest, I think the 454 Casull is more powerful than anything you need in North America. Like a full-powered, heavy for caliber 454 Casull is more powerful than anything you need it for. Again, if you want that power, you do you. But it's substantially more powerful than a 44 Magnum. And I would say a 44 Magnum is good for anything in North America. Period. And I'm going to say something maybe even controversial here is, and often forgotten about, the 41 Magnum is probably good enough for anything in the lower 48. Even lower 48 grizzlies. They're big. They're not as big as Alaskan brown bears. I've lived in Alaska too. Right, I think the 41 Magnum is fine for anything in the lower 48. And 357 Magnum's a little bit light for some stuff, but for most stuff it's okay too. The 454 Casull is not even in the same ballpark. It's leaps and bounds as far as pressure and velocity and weight above the 44 Magnum. So it's way more powerful than you need. I knew that when I got it. Part of the reason I got it was to be able to load it down. Somewhere in between a hot 45 Colt load and a full-powered 454 Casull load, depending on shootability, accuracy, things like that. I'm going to read a little bit from, since I got a new reloading manual. This is going to be a spear reloading manual. The powerful 454 Casull has been with us for a long time but did not become a standard industry cartridge until 1998. Prior to that was proprietary, privately held cartridge by Freedom Arms. Skipping down a little bit, the new industry pressure standard for the 454 Casull is transducer base and a whopping 65,000 psi, the same as most powerful rifle cartridges. Now this is from the manual. Full-powered 454 Casull loads generate wicked recoil, but reloaders can safely produce milder loads that make shooting more pleasant. Okay, so I bought this and got my reloading stuff in, and I didn't order powder or primers when I ordered my reloading stuff from Midway USA. They're not a sponsor, just that's just where I ordered them from, because you have to pay a hazmat fee, and I thought I'll just go to the store. Ammunition is much better. I assume reloading supplies are back in stock. I haven't reloaded in a while. I'll just get my powder and primers from the store. Well, I went to the store. I did some research before. I wanted 700X. 700X is something I'm very familiar with reloading. I've reloaded I don't know how many thousands of rounds with 700X. It's one of my favorite powders. I thought maybe some 800X. I went and they didn't have either one of those. What I did find was Winchester 296, and I thought, I don't remember. I know that I can reload 454 with 296. I'm not super familiar with the powder, so I bought a pound of it, and I got home and was quickly disappointed to realize you can't load down Winchester 296. It's a Magnum powder that can't really be loaded down too far. One of the sources I read said don't go below 90%. It can be dangerous to go below 90% case capacity. Well, I loaded it down to the safe published level for that powder with 300 grain spear loads. And that load was substantially hotter than the factory ammo, which is usually pretty hot. I had some factory ammo and it was substantially, as far as I don't have a chronograph, but as far as the published data goes, it was substantially hotter than that. 300 grain bullet, somewhere between 14 and 1600 feet a second. Crazy high, and crazy high recoil. I shot it, and to my astonishment, I shot it fairly well. But I didn't shoot it a lot, and when I was done shooting it, off doing something else, my hand still hurt from the recoil. That is not, can I shoot it? Yeah, but I'm not a sadist. I'm not a masochist. I'm not for punishing myself or other people for no reason. It's way more power than I needed, and I didn't want to shoot it a lot. I didn't want to shoot, 100 rounds of ammo through that. And how do you get good at shooting handguns? You shoot handguns. So I quickly realized that Winchester 296, not super useful. Went out, did some more research, and got some tight group. Now I'm familiar with tight group. I've reloaded tight group before. Tight group can be loaded down. Now remember I said that other load is 300 grains. Spear bullet, 300 grain bullet at 14 to 1600 feet a second. Well, the tight group load that I've settled on for now is a Hornady 250 grain XTP. I'm going to give you the exact charge weight, but it's a middle range of the load data. A 250 grain bullet at between 12 and 1300 feet a second. And that one, it's got some recoil, but it's not unpleasant. It does not hurt to shoot. I can shoot it quite a bit, and I have been shooting it quite a bit. It's not painful. And to give you some idea of the flexibility of that, that's substantially less powerful than the first load that I loaded for it. Now, if I look at Winchester White Box 44 Magnum jacketed soft point, and jacketed soft point's a pretty good hunting option for a Magnum pistol. Probably one of the go-tos. Just a full metal jacket, but it's Winchester White Box, right? We call that kind of one of the standards. You're looking at a 240 grain bullet at 1180. That's a factory 44 Magnum load. I'm launching a 250 grain bullet, slightly more, at between 12 and 1300 feet a second. So again, if 44 Magnum can kill anything in North America, this load ought to be able to kill anything in North America. Now, to be fair, you could load 44 Magnum a little bit hotter. Winchester lists their bare load 240 grain at 1485. But again, we see the load that I've settled on for now, and I may do some other experimentation, but it seems to be accurate. It seems to be at a level where I can shoot it comfortably and enjoy it. And it's still powerful enough, in my opinion, to kill anything in North America. 250 grain XTP at 12 to 1300 feet a second. And some people may say, well, why not just do that with the 45 Colt? Well, some of the reasons I aforementioned is the brass going to handle the pressure? Is the firearm going to handle the pressure? I like to shoot a lot, if you don't know. Newsflash. So, to me, it makes more sense to get a more powerful cartridge and load it down, less likely to have issues there, than to get a cartridge and load it hotter than recommended. I've been through that stage before. I've ruined guns before. It makes more sense to me to get the 454 Casull. And also, since I have one, I could hot load 45 Colts in it, and I wouldn't be worried about the gun. But it makes more sense, at least in theory to me, to download 454 Casull to a level somewhere between 45 Colt and 454 rather than hot load 45 Colt, because I get less freebore that way. I have less distance in the 454 Casull brass to the forcing cone and therefore to the rifling. So all of the things being equal, it should be, and ballistics don't always work this way, but it should be more accurate to have the 454 Casull load than the 45 Colt load out of the same revolver. And again, there's many factors. It may not be the case. But it seems if I was going to do one, it makes more sense to shoot the 454 Casull. Now, I'm going to talk with you a little bit about some other loads. I got the One Book, One Caliber reloading book for the 454 Casull. Got a ton of different resources in it. These are good books if you're going to load quite a bit of one caliber. I still recommend you have an actual reloading manual, but these are good. This is from Vitavori Powers. It lists 180 grain 454 Casull load. And the hottest load for that is 19... Oh, that's a mild load. 180 grain at 2142 feet per second. 180 grain bullet at over 2,000 feet a second. Published data. That's not even going off the reservation. That's a published load. And if you wanted to go with a more mild load, you could do a 180 at 1742. But that's a 180 grain bullet. If we go to Hodgdon, it's got data for the 395 grain bullet, which I've thought about getting and experimenting with just for fun. But 395 grain bullet, it's got a mild trail boss load for that at 607 feet per second. Or you could go with a hotter load at well over 1,300 feet a second, 1331. Again, that's published loads. It's not even a crazy hot load. It's a published load. a 395 grain bullet at 1331. Now, kind of the middle of the road is the 250s to the 300s. Again, that initial loading that I got, 300 grain bullet with the Winchester 296, from the light end is 18 feet per second. And I was somewhere in the middle. I don't like to be on either extreme. With a powder like that. With other powders, maybe. But a 300 grain bullet from 18 to 16 feet per second. You can look up the foot-pounds on that, but again, way more than you need for anything. If you want to shoot that load day in and day out, go ahead. Or if you just want a cylinder full of it to shoot and be like, look how cool. That's fine. That's, I think, a big reason a lot of people get big bore revolvers. Let's talk about recoil. Recently, one of the patrons shared with me a really cool resource, Bison Ballistics Recoil Calculator. They're not the only one, but it's a good, easy one to use. So for that initial loading that I shot, and a pretty standard, like a little bit hotter than the factory ammo that I got, but if you got like buffalo bore, it'd be pretty hot too. To give you an idea of recoil, 300 grains, it's let's say 16-20 feet per second. This is not going to be exact, with 28 point something grains of powder. I don't want to give out exact load data. You're looking at 32.6 foot-pounds of energy. Well, that could mean anything to you if you're not familiar with recoil energy. 32.6. To give you an idea, I put in a fairly vanilla load, one that I've loaded a ton with, let's say 115 grain bullet at right around 1200 feet a second. That's a pretty vanilla load. 4 grains of powder, and a 2-pound. The other one was a 3-pound handgun for the 454 Casull. But let's say an average 9mm handgun with rounds in it, 2 pounds, like 32 ounces. The recoil energy for a run-of-the-mill 9mm handgun, 3.4 foot-pounds. 3.4. It's almost 10 times the recoil. To give you an idea, right? And if we go to the load that I've settled on, which is still a potent load, again, right up there with factory 44 Magnum. 250 grains at 1200, but with much more conservative powder of 10 grains, because recoil is not just the weight of the projectile, it's also the weight of the powder. It's the ejecta mass. I want to consider that when you're looking at powders, but the recoil of the one that I've been shooting is 10.7. Right, a little more than 3 times the amount of a 9mm, but substantially less than the 30-some pounds of a hot load in 454 Casull. That should demonstrate some of the flexibility of the cartridge. And again, I think that's still a good enough load to kill anything in North America. So just some thoughts. One of the reasons I got back into reloading was content for you guys. Hopefully you found this enjoyable, even if you don't reload, or even if you have other big bore handguns, or you're considering, you're big bore curious, right? Hopefully you found this interesting. Tactical tip of the day is going to tie into today's episode. But try, instead of buying into marketing hype, and I've got to have this suppressor because it'll make me look so cool on Instagram, or everybody says that this new cartridge is the latest and greatest. Try with the end in mind. Start at the end. What is the end goal? And then reverse engineer it to the cartridges that makes the most sense. With all those factors, economy of scale, flexibility, availability of ammunition. Like for instance, if I lived east of the Mississippi and there was a short range weapon hunter, I've been blessed to kill a bunch of animals with a handgun. One of my favorite ways to hunt because I like the challenge. If I was doing that east of the Mississippi, where I grew up in the swamps of the South, which is where I came upon my love for stainless steel guns, my choice would probably be far different than a 454 Casull. So when you're thinking about, if you're thinking about it logically, if you just want to spend money on a gun because you like the gun and you think it's cool, have at it. But if you want a logical choice, start with the end in mind and reverse engineer it backwards. Anyway, with that, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate all that you do. Let's close with the tactical verse of the day. Galatians 6. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, that he will also reap. Comments here. I recently listened to a Charles Spurgeon sermon, not in person because he died a long time ago, but it was from the 1850s or 1860s. You can still listen to his sermons. People read them. And it was about the great white throne. Remember, one day you will face the throne of God. Every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess. And what did we just read here in Galatians? God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, that he will also reap. There is a reckoning. There is a judgment. We are in the world, and God put us in this world for a reason. But it is temporary. Remember the eternal things. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day. Okay, guys. Script, stand by if you want more content. I did an episode quite a while ago on the 454 Casull. Instead of having you, it was quite a while ago, so instead of having you go back and having to find it, I figured I would just plug it in here. If you want to be done, just turn it off. If not, if you haven't had enough, you're like, give me more. I gotta have more. 454. Here's a bunch more content. Thanks to all you guys who keep the podcast going. God provides. What is going on, gunfighters? Welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting, guns, gear, all that stuff, with Judeo-Christian values, with God at the center, and real-world first-hand experience. You may have noticed there was no commercial when you clicked on this. I'm going to put this episode out without letting it be commercialized. I'll take the financial hit on that and walk in faith. You may also realize that, wait a second, there was already a new episode today. That's right, this is a bonus, brand new episode on a day when there was already a new episode. It's March 1st. Today's episode is going to be on the 454 Casull. I can't believe I have not done this cartridge yet. I even had to triple check, like surely I have done this cartridge, but I haven't. A 45 just freight train. We're going to get into that cartridge, but before we do, March 1st, the first of the month, let's talk about a new giveaway. Giving away a N.R.A knife, or N.R.A Niv if you want to be more proper. It is a black and tan, quite handsome model. There's a bunch of different models, but the model is 511C. Also, if you have been listening for any length of time, know that I'm big on the shotgun as the ultimate survival weapon. And you know I have this whole system by God's grace, and part of that system is a good scabbard, not just a cheap bottom of the basement ballistic nylon with no cushion or anything. This is a really good, well-made scabbard. If you're familiar with the survival shotgun concept that I talk about, I keep mine in a scabbard. It's a really good scabbard. It's padded. It's got MOLLE attachments on both sides. You can put it on either side of a pack. Or what's cool about it is that it has a strap on it, so you can just throw it on your back with the shotgun in it. It's got a sling on it, so you can have it as your truck gun. If you have to get out in a hurry, you can just literally grab it and throw it on your back and take off running. And since it's MOLLE, you can attach other compartments however you want to configure that and put other ammo storage containers, whatever else you want on there. I'm also including a really nice neoprene sling. You don't want to put it on your shotgun. You may just want to put a second strap on that scabbard. It has one strap and you can sling it over one shoulder, but having two straps really is nice. And if you want to, take that shotgun out and put one of the straps on there so you have a sling for your shotgun. It's very modular. Comes with a good Winchester sling. Also, I'm going to throw in a choke tube pouch because that's part of the versatility of a shotgun, right? Different chokes. Choke tube pouch going with it. Just a really cool survival system setup. By God's grace, I'm going to give that away to one of the new patrons. So if you want to win this, go to patreon.com. There should be a link in the show notes. Or just go to Good Shepherd Training. GoodShepherdTraining.com or the Patreon link in the show notes. Either one should get you there. Put a post open to the public with pictures of this stuff in there. Picture it. The peanut butter and chocolate has hit the fan. Pick a random scenario. Balloon with an EMP goes off over the U.S. No more iPhone. You leave work, go out to your car won't start, but look back there and there's your survival shotgun in its scabbard. You grab your Bible, you grab your sling bag, you grab your truck gun, your go-to survival shotgun in its super cool scabbard. You throw on your N.R.A knife. You're a single dude, and as you're getting ready, the
girl you've been talking for a while with at work looks at you and she says, "You really look prepared." And you say, "Yeah, I listen to Gunfighter Life." I'm a little goofy today, guys, if you can't tell. I'm a little tired. I had to wake up early and go pick the wife up at the airport. But seriously, there is a giveaway going on. That stuff is in there. It'll be raffled off to one of the new patrons. If you want to become a patron, mostly to support the show, I hope that you'll consider doing that. You don't know how Patreon works. It's a way for you to step up and be an active member of the tribe. You get all kinds of insider content that I put out. I just did a area study bug out map of the U.S. for patrons. I'll often put out episodes early and without commercials for patrons. Also, if you want to be, you have the opportunity to be put into an insider chat. We talk about all kinds of school stuff, hopefully really substantial stuff, God and theology and those kinds of things. We talk about guns and knives and all manner of things. So there's all that. And maybe this is a little bit of extra incentive. Also, it's my birthday sometime this month. So if you just think, hey, I don't want to become a patron, but guy seems like a cool dude, throw him a couple bucks for his birthday. I'll put a Venmo link also in there. You can send me a few bucks. I live as a neo-nomad, so I don't really have a permanent address for you to send stuff to. My last birthday, I asked for stuff that I could use. By God's grace, I got, I think, 90 or 89 pounds of peanut butter for my birthday. This is a good birthday. If you want to send me stuff for my birthday, I thought, why not? I'll put a shout out out there. Who knows? I try and be really responsible with the patron money, but maybe I'll consider that kind of just an extra blessing money and get ammo or gear for the Alaska trip or something. I'm going to put in a really short version of the bio, and then we'll get into the 454 Casull. Try to abbreviate it. First and foremost, I am a Christian. That is number one in my life, serving God, following Jesus. Combat veteran, served in the United States Marine Corps and the Army. Also law enforcement veteran, private contractor, state rifle and pistol champion. Professional big game hunter and guide. If you feel called to support, check out Patreon. There should be a link in the show notes. With that, I am your host, Michael Melito, and I am blessed to serve you today. The 454 Casull. And I know there's different ways to pronounce it, but I say 454 Casull. You say it how you want to say it. It's America. The First Amendment applies to much more substantial stuff than how you pronounce pistol cartridges. But the 454. Now, to give credit where credit is due, I'm going to quote some of this or get some of this information from Cartridges of the World. That was a gift from a patron. Thank you. Thank you to all the patrons that already support. I am truly humbled. The 454 Casull, originally called 454 Magnum Revolver. Now, skipping ahead a little bit, it says it was developed in 1957. That's a lot older than I thought this cartridge was. It was, first public announcement was made by P.O. Ackley in 1959. That's pretty cool. I didn't know Ackley had anything to do with it either. It's 0.1 inch longer than the 45 Colt case to prevent this round from being chambered in 45 Colt revolvers. Alright, there's some stuff in there that I didn't know about the 454 Casull, but some stuff I do know about it. It is a freight train. It is a sledgehammer. It's a really good cartridge. Now, I'm going to talk about some other cartridges and then come back into the 454 Casull. The obvious question would be, well, why not the 44 Magnum? We really need the 454 Casull. And to that I would say, yes, it's 1/100th of an inch bigger between 4.5 and 4.4. But actually, there's more than that. It's more than 1/100th of an inch, right? Because 44, contrary to the name, is 0.429. 45 is 0.452, generally considered 4.52 diameter. So there's a little bit more difference there than you might expect. So it's bigger. America, supersize it. If you think about this in practical terms, this is really should be no surprise if you're familiar at all with cartridges and cartridge development, especially in the world of revolvers. You have a good cartridge to start, the 38 Special, and somebody comes along, Elmer Keefe, or someone like that, or a group of guys, and they say, well, we want to give it more power, right? Tim the Toolman Taylor it, more power. And they put a lot of powder in there. Find some pretty beefy revolvers, and they make it a little bit hotter, quite a bit hotter than a 38 Special. The same thing with a 44 Special. And that's never really going to go mainstream because somebody could put that in a really old gun because these cartridges are pretty old and blow the gun up and injure themselves. No company's going to take on that liability. So what they do generally is make it a little bit longer so that you can put, if you bump that up to a 357 Magnum, you can still put the 38 Special in it, but you can't put a 357 Magnum in a 38 Special. It's that way with the 44 Special and 44 Magnum, and it's that way with the 454 Casull, which is a longer, I don't know if it's exactly the same case, it may be beefier to hold more pressure, but it works the same way. You get the 454 Casull, and here in America we love our 45s. We love 45 Colt, 45 Long Colt. It's however you want to say that. Some people will get mad either way you say it, but 45 Long Colt, it's colloquially known as one of the cartridges that help win the West, settle the West, subdue the West, however you want to put that. It has a good reputation. 454 Casull is that you can load, if you hand load, you can absolutely hot load 45 Colt loads to be equal to or hotter than factory 44 Magnum loadings. But you run the risk of somebody buying that ammo off the shelf and putting it in their really, really old Colt Single Action Army Peacemaker. That's not good. Those were not meant for that pressure. That metallurgy back then, it wasn't meant for that kind of pressure. It was originally a black powder cartridge. You don't even need a longer case to put in more powder. You can put in a ton of powder in a 45 Long Colt case. You do that so that you can't chamber it in those older guns. And they did that with the 454 Casull. 45 Colt pushed to really, really high loadings, which are even published loads. I was just looking at my Hornady manual. List them for and it says in parentheses, Ruger Thompson Center. For guns that can handle the pressure, you can absolutely push those to really stout velocities. The 454 Casull takes that to a next level. How next level? Let's look at some numbers. Let's look at some numbers here. Buffalo Bore factory load. 300 grain bullet at 1,500 feet a second. 300 grain bullet at 1,500 feet a second. If you think about that compared to almost unarguably the most popular handgun round, the 9mm, you're talking roughly 115 grain for a common loading, and let's just say 1,200 feet a second. And I know loads vary a lot, but for good rough numbers to wrap our brain around, you're talking 115 at 1,200. This you're talking 300 at 1,500. And energy also of 1,500. Now, 400 is a really, really pretty stout 9mm load, 400 foot-pounds. This has 1,500 foot-pounds, to put that in perspective. But wait, there's more. That's not even the beefiest load in here, factory load. It lists a 360 grain bullet at 1425 for 1630. And there's another load, even hotter, at 325 grain at 1525 for 1675 foot-pounds. 1,675 foot-pounds. Now, I will be the first to concede that foot-pounds does not necessarily equate to effectiveness, but it helps us understand the power of this cartridge. 400 for a pretty stout 9mm load versus 1,675. Right? That's a stout load. Now, to give you some idea, to compare apples to apples, and it won't be exactly, it'll be like Granny Smith's to Golden Delicious. They're not exactly the same. But I'm coming from the same book, The Cartridges of the World, factory loads. I know you can hand load all kinds of things in SKU numbers, but factory loads listed in here. The most foot-pounds in the 44 mag is listed as a 255 grain at 1410 for 993. And we just quoted over 16 for the 454 Casull. So the 44 mag is also a beast. the 454 Casull is just a big, beefy round. It's just... Now, some of the really nerdy ballistics guys like me may really like those kind of numbers. I'm not going to go into more numbers because I don't want to go too far on that. But then the obvious question is, well, why not the 460? Because the 460 is like the 454 Casull lengthened. And I would say, if you want to go that route just because you want a big, big revolver, that's okay. But there's kind of a tipping point for me. If you look at the revolvers that are chambered in 460, they are really, really big. In my opinion, too big to be practical to carry and use. They're, in my opinion, kind of a novelty. I love handgun hunting. I do. If you're going to carry a gun the size of a Smith & Wesson X-Frame, and they're great guns. Like, I have a full-powered rifle, a Kibber Adirondack, that the rifle weighs sub 5 pounds. Now look at what those things weigh and how big and bulky they are, and what are you doing, right? Those X-Frames, if you've never held one, they're just really, really big. They're so big, in my opinion, as to be a novelty. Here's the beauty of the 454 Casull. That's not the case. It's kind of below that tipping point. At least for me, your tipping point may be different. But you can get that in a Ruger Super Red Hawk, which is a big gun. But it's still a handgun, right? You could still carry it in a holster. I'm talking like a normal kind of holster, not like a giant chest rig. Like your baby strapped to your chest in a little baby carrier. Like a normal kind of holster. You could carry it for bear defense on a hike, and it would be practical, opposed to having a giant X-frame that you kind of have as this thing because you just want to have it. It's the 454 Casull, I think, can be chambered in guns that are still of a practical size, and that's for me. Your tipping point might be different, and there's nothing wrong with having really big guns. Something like a 460 or a 500 Smith & Wesson. If you want to go that route, I mean, go. But to me, the 454 Casull is this balance of you can still have a powerhouse of a round and a revolver that's of a size as to not be ridiculous. And that's where I think it really comes in. Also, you can shoot 45 long Colt in it. And I don't know, but I don't see why you couldn't shoot 45 auto rim in it, which is an even lighter round. But 45 Colts, especially since cowboy action shooting has kind of taken off in the last, couple of decades, there's a lot of these cowboy loads if you don't hand load. And a cowboy load out of a gun made for a 454 Casull, a fairly heavy one like a Super Red Hawk, is going to be pretty nice to shoot. So you get a big spectrum there. You can go from really light, fairly common cowboy action 45 long Colts to hot, like we just read, freight train kind of ballistics on hot 454 Casulls. Also, if you hand load, there's a lot of flexibility there because although 44 stuff is not uncommon, again, in America, we love our 45s. And 45 projectiles, 4.52 diameter, they're a lot more common, I think, and you get a lot broader spectrum and a lot more options. And that's not to take away from the 44 mag. The 44 mag is an awesome round. The 454 Casull, as we saw in those numbers, is just a different beast. What is it used for? I mean, if you're talking CCW for defense against people, you're doing that because you want to, not because it's the most practical, let's be honest. This is a handgun hunting round. It would excel at that. And also a dangerous game defense round. You're going fly fishing in a place where there's grizzly bears and you don't want to carry a long gun. You want a handgun hunt. Big, even-toed ungulates. You want to be able to do it with a handgun that you can stand and shoot with and handle like a normal handgun. It's not, in my opinion, comically big. Excel at that. That said, let's talk about some of the really cool guns this has been chambered in. And I have a favorite, and I'm not going to apologize for it. Probably because I saw it when I was a kid and I thought, that is a beautiful gun. I think it made it on the Most Beautiful Guns episode. If I didn't mention it, I should have. And it is the Ruger Super Red Hawk in 454 Casull. And not just any. Oh no. For a brief period, they made these in... You're probably familiar with the Ruger stainless, but it wasn't that bright stainless. It was I don't even know how to describe it. It was like a graphite dark gunmetal gray. And it was just exquisitely beautiful. In my opinion, one of the most beautiful guns ever made. Just the caliber, the size, the finish, just gorgeous. Just, if you ever see that kind of gray, matte, semi-gloss finish, I just think it's a thing of beauty. I wish that would come back. I think they may still offer it on some of their rifles, but I don't know that they offer it anymore on their Super Red Hawk. But even the Super Red Hawks, if you don't care about that beautiful, exquisite finish, they still make them. They still make them in 454 Casull. They make the Alaskan, which, as you might imagine, is kind of geared towards bear defense if you want an even smaller, handier one. But that's a really, really good option. Taurus also chambers for this. They have their Raging Judge. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh there. They also have their Raging Hunter. And again, I mentioned the different models of Super Red Hawk. Now, up until recently, I had kind of written off the Taurus revolvers, especially the big frame revolvers. And perhaps that was unfair of me because I listened recently, one of the patrons sent me, talk about other people's podcasts too, right? It's not just me. I'm not hopefully by God's grace, a megalomaniac. I'm happy to hear other people's podcasts and have them like other people's podcasts. They shared with me the Mountain Man Dan podcast. I like it. He says he's put thousands of rounds through his Taurus tracker. So, and that's a big bore. I think is in 44 mag, but that leads me to believe maybe they're a little bit better than I give them credit for. So if you want 454 Casull on a budget, as you might imagine, I don't want to quote prices with inflation and everything, who knows, but they're quite a bit cheaper than the Rugers. Also, in searching for guns, I see one that I didn't know existed. It's called the Citadel Lever Tac. It's one of those tactical lever action rifles in 454 Casull. So if that's something you're looking for, there you go. But I do believe if they don't make it currently, they have up until pretty recently, Rossi. And you might say, Rossi, weren't you just talking about Taurus? Yeah, but I once upon a time had an old lever action. It was a Puma. I think it was made by Rossi or maybe pre-Rossi. M44 mag as a little, hunting carbine. And it was a great gun. I kind of wish I hadn't sold it. But it was great. It was crazy accurate just with iron sights. It had beautiful wood. It had a nice fit and finish. And Rossi makes their lever gun, or has made it in the past, in 454 Casull. And they also make it in stainless, which I give them props for that. I like a good stainless gun. As you probably know, if you take a pistol caliber and put it in a rifle with that longer barrel, you're going to burn more powder in general in almost all practical cases and get more velocity, as if you needed more velocity in the 454 Casull, in case that grizzly bear is wearing body armor. So, and all kidding aside, it would be a great round in a lever gun. It really, really would. Talk about a heavy-hitting carbine. That would certainly be one. So some really cool guns chambered in this. I'm sure there's been others, or there are others, but those are just a few. So there are some options, and it's by no means obscure. As I mentioned, you can shoot 45 long Colt in it. You could probably shoot 45 auto rem in it. I would double check that with the manufacturer of whatever gun you have. But I just went to Midway. I get no kickbacks from Midway. I'm not affiliated with them in any way other than I buy stuff from them and with my own money. But they're a good manufacturer. They're kind of my go-to to check. And they had 22 454 Casull loads listed. So it's not an obscure cartridge. And it's a really, really good cartridge. Certainly, I think, more than capable of slaying any beast of the field on the planet. With that, I'm going to start wrapping up the episode. Don't forget about the giveaway. We're giving away the Mora knife, that shotgun scabbard, and the other stuff to, by God's grace, one of the many patrons that wins the raffle at the end of this month. That's March in the year of our Lord, 2023. With that, tactical tip of the day and tactical verse of the day. Tactical tip of the day. You ever have your go-to hunting rifle, shotgun, whatever, in the stock, you just think, I wish this was a little bit more grippy. Well, there's a couple of ways that I have in the past currently still used to make those grippier. Now, caveat, I don't treat my guns like Barbie dolls. I use them. I'm not afraid to take a Dremel to them or a file or what have you. So if you're a gun collector, you might not want to do this. But there's a couple of things. Have you ever seen that spray-on spray paint that looks like stone? It comes out in a bunch of different colors all at once. They have like a tan version and a gray version. Usually I think you can find it at Walmart. Well, the upside of that is it's really grippy as well. You can spray paint your stock with that. I would spray paint it on something else first. Obviously take the action out of the stock and just spray paint the stock. I shouldn't have to say that, but you can spray that on the stock, either the whole thing or tape over it and get it on the areas that you want where your firing hand and support hand go. You can spray that on there. If you don't mind respraying it pretty frequently, you can just do that. If you want it to stay on longer, something you can do is get some matte clear coat. Now, practice this on something that's not the stock first. But when that spray paint has been on there a few minutes before it's completely dry, and not too soon because it'll get runny. Like I said, try this on something else first. You spray that matte clear coat, and in my experience, it greatly enhances the ability of that to stay on the stock. Then you have a much grippier stock, DIY. I'm also looking at one of the hunting rifles I'm blessed to have, a Kimber Hunter in 308. And on the stock of it, I have wrapped some silicone tape. Not like that pipe tape to stop leaky pipes. I'm talking like that rubber silicone sticks to itself tape. It's pretty grippy. You can wrap it around that stock. It shouldn't hurt it at all. Maybe if it's a wood stock or something, you might get some oil or something in there. But if it's a plastic stock, composite stock, whatever you want to call it, you should be able to wrap that on there and it shouldn't cause any problems at all. Greatly increases the grippiness, especially grippiness, is that a word? I told you I was tired. You can wrap it on there around where your hand grips the gun by the trigger. Give you a little bit more grip on that gun. And if both those things don't appeal to you, just the old school skateboard tape, right? That's what we did years ago in competition. I think people probably still do it. Handgun, like say texturing, has come a long way. A lot of factory guns now come with really good textures. That wasn't the case, decades ago in a lot of cases. But you can still use that grip tape and put it on a stock or even on a handgun if you want just a little bit of grip in more areas. Anyway, there's some tactical tips on getting a grippier stock. Tactical verse of the day. Gonna be powerful, simple, and brief. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. With that, men, thanks for listening and have a blessed day.